Okay. So George is the lead developer of Jetpack now. Did I get that?
I am the team lead.
The team.
Which,
okay.
Yeah, sure. I guess I could be the lead developer as well.
Okay.
Let's go with that.
Team lead of Jetpack. So he's going to talk all about it. Okay. Thanks.
Cool. Okay. So, in trying to come up with some sort of a relevant title without being too kitschy, I came up with "Come Fly with Me," storing in the WordPress.com cloud. I am the team lead for the Jetpack Pit Crew, which is the group of currently about 10 folks within Automattic that actively develops the Jetpack plugin. I'm a regular contributor to WordPress core, and I am the lead organizer for WordCamp Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is happening February 28th. So if anyone wants to catch a train, drive down, we're only about 2 hours away, so come say hi. We're very welcoming. Our mission, if you choose to accept it. Our mission of Jetpack is twofold. There's two main things that we focus on. The first is accomplishing feature parity with WordPress.com. This includes things like our contact forms, short codes, widget visibility, sharing links, and more. And the second bit is leveraging the WordPress.com cloud servers to accomplish a lot of things that you really can't do terribly efficiently if you're using a little $5 a month shared host. This includes things like related posts, which are powered by our large Elasticsearch index, Photon, which is our image CDN, Publicize, where instead of you having to manually tweet or Facebook post about your post every single time you make one, it'll automatically send them out without you having to worry about getting a developer account, getting API keys, figuring out what are API keys, figuring out where you can get them, and then plugging them into your site. It just automatically works for you using our shared WordPress.com account keys for everyone. Between the two of these, folks often ask if one tends to be a bit more preeminent than the other. It's really not. The first one with feature parity with WordPress.com isn't just because we like what we have with WordPress.com and we want to share it, which we do. It's also more along the lines of we want to make the transition path for users that want to migrate either from WordPress.com to WordPress.org self-hosted sites or back again as simple and comfortable as possible. In the end, WordPress is WordPress, and we really don't care if we're hosting you or someone else is hosting you. We just want you to have a good time and democratize publishing as much as we can. So, apart from this all, what can Jetpack do for me? There's 5 main ways that we're trying to help out site owners, and those can be grouped into customizing your site, writing great content, growing and engaging your audience, security and stability of your site, and finally, with all this stuff happening, performance really does matter. So going through sequentially, first is customizing your site. Now there's a lot of things in Jetpack that you can use to customize your site, and this is only a small assortment, but we've got custom CSS, we've got a custom mobile theme, we've got the contact form, we've got sidebar widgets, widget visibility, plus a host of other things. To start off with, custom CSS basically makes it very easy to craft changes to your theme without needing a child theme. We give you a visual editor that you can work with. We store revisions for you. You can, like you see up there, you can choose a SAS or a less preprocessor. There's a lot of different options it gives you to make it easier to modify your site. Now, if you're running in a multi-site environment, like we do on WordPress.com, avoiding thousands of needless child themes is a really big win. Also, if you're already running a child theme, you can still use custom CSS. One thing a lot of people that don't like custom CSS will say is, oh, why are you storing something in the database that you then have to pull out and output for every page load? Well, it's not quite as bad as that, but they are of the mind that instead you should just do a child theme, which is great, except WordPress core doesn't support grandchild themes. So if you're already using a child theme, there's absolutely no way you can customize it apart from modifying the child theme you're already using, and that's an entire ball of wax that I could spend the next half hour explaining why it's a really, really bad idea. Changes are stored in your database, so all the revisions are stored. It's actually stored as a custom post type, so if you ever make a mistake, you can always step back, undo, change it. The CSS is always stored on a per theme basis. So if you change themes, your CSS goes away and you can have a blank slate again. If you change back, it all just pops right back into place. And then, like I said, we support both the SAS and LESS preprocessors. One of the main things that folks look at when building a site is, I need a way for folks to contact me. That preferably isn't just leaving a comment on a post, because it's not terribly great to use personal details when it's going to be publicly displayed. So our contact form editor needs an overhaul. I'm the first to admit it. It's not the prettiest and slickest thing under the sun. We actually have a scheduled iteration coming up in the next couple of months on it, but it's there, it's stable, and it works. If you need something a lot more advanced, there's always other plugin solutions like Ninja Forms or Gravity Forms. But if all you need is a very basic contact form with maybe a couple custom fields, this will probably do you. It gives you a simple drag and drop form editor. You can customize your fields, generate leads. Form submissions are both emailed and saved locally, and if you really want to export them all, with one click you can save them all as a CSV and start playing around with them and getting some good data out of all the submissions you've been aggregating. And if you're already using a Kismet for spam, which I trust you all are, your submissions on the contact form will already be filtered and pulled out for that. And finally, sidebar widgets and visibility. We pulled from a lot of third-party integration widgets that ship on WordPress.com, like displaying Gravatar profiles, images, galleries, Facebook like boxes, Twitter timeline widgets, displaying the contents of RSS feeds from other sites on yours, what have you. The main idea here is to make it easy to do a lot of things that Core doesn't support. Sometimes it's because they don't have enough reason to, sometimes it's because this is just dealing with an external API that we can do because we can push updates a lot more quickly, and Core might view it as a little bit. Core doesn't like doing third-party integrations in widgets. They'll support OEmbed because it's simple, it's basic, and it's clear, and it's a published standard, but Core doesn't always like coding around an existing widget or an embed or something detailed that you can get from Facebook or Twitter. We'll do that. We'll run through, we'll maintain it, and we'll make sure that it keeps working going forward. And then widget visibility, which is what we see on the bottom here, is going to let you target specifically which pages your widgets are going to display on. You can add it to a contact form widget to only display it on single post pages, while omitting it on archived pages, or add a gallery only to your home page. There's a lot of options that you can do with it, and it's for a lot of themes that will, sometimes you'll see they've got 8 different sidebars. This is your homepage sidebar. This is your single post page sidebar. Right. This is a great way of simplifying things, so there's only one sidebar and you just pick where you want your widgets to actually appear. Fairly basic, and there's about 12 different plugins that do it. This is just our take on it that we happen to like a lot. So that's the main aspects of customizing your site. There's a couple other ways we include, like site icon, site logo, that do different things. Some themes will support a site logo, so you can upload an image, and they'll echo that out in the theme. Site icon is a great way of uploading an image, and will handle all the favicon generation for you. But that's the bulk of editing and configuring your site. Once you've got your site set up, you're going to need to worry about writing great content. For anyone that ever does search engine optimization, they'll be able to tell you the first thing you need to worry about before worrying about the details and the minutia is always writing your content, getting unique content that's going to draw users in. If you're not drawing users in, then you're not really going to be able to generate organic backlinks and keep chasing that on and on down the line. So great content is a very good end in and of itself. We help support that by providing posts by email, Markdown, beautiful math, spelling and grammar check, shortcode embeds, carousels, tile galleries, others that I didn't think to list on this page. Long story short, post by email will give you a private email address that will publish to your site. You can use it with third-party integrations. You can use it to, if you don't want to pull up WP admin and you just want to shoot off a quick blog post on the fly, you can fire it off from an email. It's not really a big deal.
Do a lot of people do that?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. It's a lot more common on WordPress.com, and a lot of folks really like it because you can do it for easy third-party integrations without needing to worry about authentication. It's just email to this thing. So folks will set it up for error logs, or folks may set it up for if this and that is a common usage, just send an email to this address formatted this way, and it'll automatically cross-post to the blog.
And the formatting of the email is retained, or it's just plain text?
It's pulled across to an extent. I mean, we're going to run it through KSES to make sure there's nothing malicious in there. And there's a number of custom shortcodes that we support in it that pull through, so you can like specify what categories I'd like the post to be tagged into, what tags, what I want the title of the post to be, do I want it to publicize out to my subscribers, which if you haven't heard of publicize, we'll be getting to that in a minute. Yeah.
So if the email has a URL that would trigger an O embed, will it work?
Yeah. If it doesn't, I'll fix it. But no, it totally should.
So YouTube.
I haven't tested it directly, but it should. And if it doesn't, I'll be very surprised.
Wouldn't that link just get sent to your WordPress
Yes.
site, and WordPress would handle that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I would be very surprised if it didn't work, because that's not my thing to break. Markdown is something that not everyone is terribly familiar with, but it can really help for if you're writing a lot of content, if you don't want to work terribly much with your formatting. Markdown is a great way of letting your plain text be readable, but also processed into rich text. So you can wind up if you put a row of equal signs underneath a line, it turns into a header tag. If you put brackets around something and then a link in parentheses, it'll turn it into a normal link. But all in a way that if you're just reading the source text, it's also totally readable. A lot of coders like me like it because it makes sense for us when we're writing documentation and text files without having to actually manually write HTML. A lot of other newer CMSs that have been playing in different areas have been using Markdown as their primary way of formatting content, like Ghost. But it's something that we think is kind of fun. You might not use, and that's okay. But it's there for the folks that really want it. It's there to make what couldn't be done possible for the folks that really want it. But if not everyone likes it, that's okay. And the next thing falls very much into the same caveat, which is beautiful math LaTeX. WordPress.com has a lot of math bloggers because we support a lot of the LaTeX text formatting that they need to display complicated math and scientific formulas, and that's something that we pulled across the Jetpack as well. This is another thing that falls into the feature parity. So if someone's been a WordPress.com blogger, decides to move to a self-hosted site, all their content should still work, and this is part of that. The first string looks very complicated, but expanded, it turns into this, which is readable if you know what you're looking at, I think, but a bit beyond me. For folks that are writing content and a bit short on time, spelling and grammar check is always a very useful thing. Things that will normally give you underlines in Microsoft Word saying, hey, you misspelled this, or I think you've got your tenses not matching up correctly, this is for you. If your name is Aaron Jordan, this is doubly for you. As he is horrible at spelling. But it gives you a little button in your text editor that will automatically check your usage. It'll check your spelling. It's not as perfect as a human proofreader, but quite frankly, that's never going to happen on any sort of automated process. But we found that it is pretty good, and it has really stood to make folks' workflow a lot more comfortable.
What languages does it support?
English and I think about a half dozen others. I don't know the list offhand, but it should be on the WordPress or on the Jetpack.me support page. I'll be glad to look it up after the talk. Finally, shortcode embeds. Shortcodes, for anyone that's not used them, are very WordPress specific code that lets you do nifty things. It's a way of just, it's a shortcut that'll expand to something else. You could use it to say like, open the shortcode YouTube ID equals blank, that's the video ID. That'll expand to the full editor. This is very useful for a number of sites, especially if you don't trust your users, like will happen on a multi-site environment, where if you don't want to risk your users pasting a script tag in or an iframe tag in because that could be used maliciously, this is a great way of safely specifying, I only want to allow this code, and here's how you can specify it. So we provide archives tags, Google Maps tags, Twitter timelines, script, Bandcamp, SlideShare presentations, and probably about a half dozen more. There's a lot more that are on WordPress.com than are currently in Jetpack, and we're regularly going through them to see which ones we can comfortably fit in, just to, because when someone's migrating their content from WordPress.com to Jetpack, their content should migrate over and should just work. Next up is the carousel, which when you're displaying your galleries, why not display the individual images in an informational lightbox? Basically it pops up. If you have comments enabled for your attachments, you'll see a little comment box down the bottom. And then what you see on the bottom right there expands to this, which will give you actual information pulled out of the meta of that image. This isn't information you need to manually specify. This is all data that's just extracted from the original source that you've uploaded, as long as you've not stripped out the third-party tags. So we can see that this picture was taken with the Canon EOS Digital Revel, shutter speed, focal length, aperture, what have you, which a lot of photo bloggers get very meticulous about and are very obsessive with. So we're happy to support them as we're able.
Does it also support additional IPTC or EXIF stuff, like captions and?
Some. It's hard-coded, the ones it actually looks for, but it could certainly be extended to add new ones if you wanted. And tiled galleries, which is a way of, instead of just saying boom, 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 here's a picture, it's going to resize them to make a mosaic of your content that'll be a bit prettier for your visitors to look at. As you hover over them, the images or the captions will slide up from the bottom. They can click on it to get a larger view. We like shiny things. That tends to come across in some of the things we put in. So it's something that a lot of users on WordPress.com really like for displaying their content, and we're happy to pull it across. So
doesn't the carousel, is it moving around at all, or no?
No, it's just you basically click that. You click one of the images here, and it opens up into this. And then you can use the right and left arrows on either side. They're kind of faint right now, but they get more obvious as you hover near them. And then they'll just loop through everything in a given gallery.
Okay. So the carousel is because it goes right and left. Yes.
Yes. It is a white box carousel, not like the sitting at the top of the thing, sliding through 6 banner images that you shouldn't use. They're bad. Now that we've talked about the content, see how you can grow and engage your audience. We provide a number of tools for this, from publicize to sharing links, comments and likes, subscriptions, related posts, and several others that I didn't list here because I can only talk for so long before you all drop dead out of boredom. Publicize basically makes it easier for you to push out notifications to social media when you publish a post. Instead of having to maintain your own connections to the remote sites or having to remember to copy the permalink, paste it into Facebook, Twitter, Path, Tumblr, Google+, and LinkedIn, it's going to handle it all for you automatically. It's a great way to keep connected with your social media audience, keep them engaged, keep them aware of what you're doing. Now that we've talked about that, which is how you can pull them in, sharing links is how they can actually reshare your content on social networks. On the back end, we give you a very easy drag and drop editor, and then you can choose which way you want the sharing links to appear on the front end of the site. Very easy to do, works on any theme. There's a number of different plugins that do it differently, but this is just what we've found works. You can choose to use the official sharing buttons like we have on the bottom there, but we personally I prefer just the icons up top, and it actually will query the third-party services if they have an API available and display the sharing count. So if 58 people have shared your article on Facebook, the Facebook one's got a little bubble next to it that says 58, regardless of which mode of button you choose. The nice thing about the icon only or the icon and text options is you're going to have a fairly consistent uniform look with no alignment issues, and it's just going to be pretty no matter what theme you're working with. Whereas with the official buttons, we try to straighten them as best we can, but because each button is provided by a different service, there's always going to be some slight alignment issues. Like you can see how the stumble upon button there is just a little bit higher in pixels and not quite as tall as the Facebook one before it. There's not much that can be done about that because that's all coming from different services. But by normalizing it with our own buttons up top, we get a much prettier interface that, as I said before, we like shiny things. Comments are another great example of this. It's a drop-in comment form replacement. It's not something that requires any work in your theme to integrate. It works with all themes. You own your own content. Unlike third-party comment services like Discuss or Livefire, all your content actually lives in your database. This is using WordPress's native comment display system. So the way the person who wrote your theme intended comments to show up is how they're going to look. It's not some drop-in system like Facebook comments where it all looks like Facebook, where it looks like Discuss on your site. It's actually going to look right. It's going to match your content. It's going to blend in with everything else surrounding it. We offer multi-service authentication. So instead of entering their details, they can just authenticate with their Facebook or their Twitter, and all of the details automatically propagate through. But the most useful thing is if you're already logged into a WordPress.com site, no matter which Jetpack site you're on or WordPress.com site, it already knows who you are, and all they need to do is type a comment, hit enter, and they're done. It's basically used to decrease the feedback friction, leave a comment. We also support running things through Akismet, and really, in the end, everything's running through WordPress, doing your own comment system. This is just a layer of Chrome on top of it that makes it easier for users to comment, easier to authenticate, and is better to drive discussion throughout the system. Now, users aren't always going to want to take the time to think of something witty to say or to want to be clever. They will often want to just say, I like this, I'm going to move on. I mean, how often on Facebook do you go through, you like a post because you don't really want to take the time to think of something cool to write on it. It happens. So likes is a great way to do that. So if they're logged into their WordPress.com account, they click like and they move on. It's a great way to get positive reinforcement on your posts and show that folks actually do like your content, even if they're not taking the time to write a comment. I'm sorry, I like enabling laziness. What can I say? And finally, subscriptions. With subscriptions, you can make it a lot easier for your visitors to keep coming back. They can subscribe either via the WordPress.com reader or via email notifications. So no matter what their preferred way of getting your updates is, your updates are going to be driving to their inbox or to the reader, however they prefer it, and they're going to keep coming back, following up, and seeing what's new on your site. How can they keep engaged with the content that we've helped you put together very prettily in the last step. So that's basically a lot of, but not all of the main ways that will help engage and keep your users engaged and involved in your site and coming back to get new. Next is the security and stability of your site. We've got 4 things on this so far. The WordPress.com single sign-on, managing your site, monitoring your uptime, and brute force login protection. Single sign-on basically enables users to log into their accounts with their linked WordPress.com account. This can be more secure, especially if they're connecting from unsecured Wi-Fi, if they're sitting in a coffee shop. Who knows who else is sitting on that Wi-Fi and could be listening to every single message they send back and forth to your WordPress.com site. Because if you're not using an HTTPS SSL certificate, everything is sent unencrypted plain text. So it's easy to go in and just find, oh, they're logging in, there's their password, I'm just going to copy that down so I can use it for future reference. As everything on WordPress.com is fully secured and encrypted, that is a great way to ensure that if they log in via WordPress.com, they're never sending their password in plain text, and the fact that you don't have an SSL certificate is not going to expose their password to anyone nasty on the network that could be sniffing and trying to find nasty ways to do things. Plus, we support two-factor authentication. WordPress.com supports TOTP, time-based one-time password two-factor authentication, as well as texting you codes that you can enter to confirm you are who you say you are. If you're running any sort of a larger site, and even if you're not using this, I would love you to use this. If you don't want to, that's cool, but please see about having some sort of two-factor authentication set up. If you're at all concerned about getting hacked, it really is crucial. For managing your site, from the WordPress.com dashboard, you can manage content and infrastructure across all of your sites. You can update your plugins across all 8 or 12 or 538 of your sites. If one plugin just pushes a security release, with one click you can deploy that to all your sites. It makes sense. We already have, the point of Jetpack is to enable two-way communication, and as things are authenticated both ways, we can do secure requests at your behest to keep sites safe, secure, up to date when you need it.
So even though it's self-hosted, you still have an account and log into WordPress.com to manage your site?
Well, Jetpack, to authenticate and connect Jetpack, you basically need to log into a WordPress.com account in the first place, because a lot of the stuff is secure API endpoints. You basically need to have an account to identify who you are when you're initially connecting your site. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do on the WordPress.com dashboard that you can't do from your self-hosted site. The other benefit of the .com dashboard, as I mentioned earlier, is it's going to be fully HTTPS encrypted. So if you're sitting in a coffee shop, you might not want to log into the admin side of your site to write a post, because someone could, if they're not sniffing your password, they could certainly sniff your cookies and then say, hey, you're you? Cool, I'm you too. Let's go with this. Basically, we've got your back. We're trying to make the web a more secure place, and if you want, you can make it a lot simpler to write a post and then post it to, if you've got 20 sites, whether they're hosted on WordPress.com or self-hosted, you can post it to wherever you need to. next for stability is we help you manage your uptime. Honestly, for sites, uptime and reliability matters. If your site goes down and you're the last to know, that's not a good time. That's sad Christmas. Monitor checks in with your site every 5 minutes. If it ever finds out that something's wrong, we connect to 2 other, we call them Veriflyer servers located in 2 other geographic locations, and if they can't connect to your site either, then it's not just some minor route blockage, it's actually downtime. It's actually something on the way to your site is not working, or your server itself is down. So at that point, we'll fire off an email and, you know, hey, your site's down, and then we'll keep pinging it, finding out, is it down, is this up yet? Is it up yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? View alert, view alert.
Every 5 minutes.
Yes. And actually, when we're trying to see when it comes back up, we'll ping a little bit more frequently, like every minute or so. So when it does come back up, you'll know. And we'll fire off an email letting you know, hey, all's right with the world. Your site is back up. It was down for 5 hours and 32 minutes because reasons. And in our next release, we're actually shipping brute force login protection. Some of you may recall back in August, word went out that Automattic acquired a great little company based out of Maine called Brute Protect. I'm proud to announce that that's finally rolling into Jetpack. And it's large-scale network brute force detection. What this means is that the way brute force attempts happen now is not one IP address, one bad actor sends 100,000 dummy passwords at you trying to guess and see which one's right. That's not how it happens. What happens is there's 1,000 sites, each of which send 20 attempts to your site. So as soon as one would get locked out by limit login attempts, another one's picking it up, or they're all trying at the same time, hammering your site until something happens to work. But as each one is only hitting your site 20 times, they're also hitting 1,000 other sites 20 times. By picking up on that, we can block their attempts to get into your site before they even send their first attempt. So if we detect that this IP address, this server, this computer is sending attempts to break into someone's site, we can block it across the whole network for a while and ensure that they're not going to have a chance to brute force your password. They're not going to have a chance to break into your site. And that's going to be coming out in Jetpack 3.4, and we're very excited about it.
And when is that?
Either later this month or very beginning of next. And finally, performance matters. There's 3 main things I'm covering in this, which is stats by WordPress.com, Photon Image CDN, and related content, related posts with Elasticsearch. Stats is really hard to do locally. MySQL databases aren't built to handle that sort of load and constantly throwing new, I gotta visit all these write attempts. They're not built to handle that. Your normal shared server, the MySQL database is optimized for reads over writes, because usually there's going to be a lot more read requests to the database happening than write requests. So it's just meant to perform better that way. There are other third-party services you can use, like Google Analytics, which is great. I personally would say run both in parallel. There's no reason not to. The main advantage, I would say, of WordPress.com stats over other services like Google Analytics is several. We are very good about sharing your data. So if you want to get your data back out about views on a given post, or total views, or anything, we have about 8 different APIs and ways you can pull that down, have data, and play with it. We're also very tightly integrated with the WordPress mobile apps. So if you go into those, say, how are my stats on my site? That's going to be WordPress.com Jetpack stats that you're looking at. And finally, we understand your content and how it's displayed. So Google Analytics, if it's tracking your stats, it's only tracking the URLs that's being viewed. If you ever change your permalinks or change your permalink structure, it's going to count that as a completely different post because the URL just changed. If you ever change domains, if you change from my cool site to my awesome site, but it's the same WordPress in the back end, they won't know that this is the same thing. What we can do is we actually track things by post ID and permalink and your site, so your stats are going to follow you, and they're actually going to be there, and you can play with them. We actually include a widget in Jetpack called Top Posts that is based directly on your, based directly on the stats data that's been aggregated, and will pull out what your most commonly read posts are. Whether they're viewing them by infinite scrolling past them, that's still going to get logged. Whether they're viewing them by reading that post by directly linking to it, that's going to get counted. So we're very thorough about making sure that each view is properly attributed and counts to the right article. The Photon Image CDN is a phenomenal tool that if you're at all using Jetpack and you don't have this turned on, please go turn it on. It will make your site run a lot faster. We've actually done a lot of tests across a number of shared hosts, and with versus without Photon turned on, the site can reliably handle double the number of concurrent users. This is because whether they're using Nginx or Lightspeed or Apache, whatever they happen to be using, if it's not being tied up serving large bulky images, it can instead spend those connections to serve out page load requests a lot quicker because it has a lot less bulk happening. We have a lot of different endpoints for Photon that you can pass arguments in to apply filters to them, to resize the images, to turn them black and white or sepia toned if you really want to crop them any which way you want. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do to play with it, but at the very basic level, if you turn it on, all the content images in your site and anything past any featured images, any images in posts, will just get passed through Photon as a filter and with no changes to your database, which means that it's going to be very easy to turn off if for some reason you don't like it. There's no harm, no foul, and it's going to speed up your site because the images are going to load from more local servers to the end user, as opposed to your one box that happens to be hosted in a server farm out in Provo, Utah, or wherever it happens to be.
So where exactly do we turn this on?
So in Jetpack, if you click the little settings icon up at the top,
Okay.
see the big list of all the different features you can turn on and off?
Okay.
There's one called Photon, just click enable.
On the top in settings? Okay. Thanks.
And best of all, it's completely free. So there's a lot of other CDNs you can use that will wind up running you however much a month. This is just for images, and we give it away for free. So, yeah.
Is there a size limit on the image?
Nope.
Or total number of images served per month? No
No.
limitations.
No. Have
Is that
fun.
Is that a
Pretty
WordPress
much.
service or is it a?
It's WordPress.com, yeah, we provide it. The source code for the Photon server is actually hosted at code.svn.wordpress.org if anyone wants to take it, play with it, and run it on their own servers, but no. The only real restriction is we need to be able to download the original image from your server in under 10 seconds. So I mean, if you have a really, really slow server, or it's a utterly humongous image, that might bump up against those upper limits, but that I've seen maybe 10 people in the last year that's happened to. Yeah.
Will it handle resizing and thumbnail generation as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, Photon will automatically swap in the appropriately sized version of the image based on how it's needed. Then we actually also enqueue a devicepixel.js script that if the user happens to be visiting the site from a MacBook Pro with Retina display or something with a high DPI display, it's automatically going to upsample the images so they're displayed in full, crisp, sharp Retina resolution on all the devices.
Is it just images or is it PDFs?
Just images.
Just images.
Just rasterized images, no vectors. So SVGs won't really work on it.
Is it a CDN for your CSS or JavaScript, HTML?
Nope, just images.
Just
Just images.
So PNG, JPEG, what's in the
WAF,
Yeah.
I think.
Right, okay.
In practice, it's mostly PNG, JPG, GIFs, and I think there might be one or two others that we support, but PNG, GIF, JPEG is the main holy trinity of images.
SVG?
That's scalable vector graphics, and that's not rasterized. So if we were to rasterize it, it would both lose quality and take up more space. So.
Do you
That
know
would
how
be
this
silly.
plays with other caching plugins like W3?
It just swaps out the URL.
I mean,
So
do you know if it takes precedence? So, like, for example, if you want to serve images on Photon, but then it handles all the JS files and all that stuff. Do you know whether?
Well,
like,
JS and
Photon-
CSS is enqueued differently.
Yeah.
So that would be how. So it would affect. I think W3 handles CDNs differently, but I think normally Photon winds up winning out just because of how we're dropping in the URLs. Because when we're filtering it, we're changing the domain that the images are hosted from. At which point, most other third-party plugins like W3 would say, "Hey, that's not the domain I know. I'm not going to mess with that."
You're filtering the content with your URL.
Yes. As well as we filter the content, but we also filter a number of other things. So if you're calling like get attachment image source, that gets filtered. Or any other way that you're actually using an image in a theme, that can be filtered as well. And next up is related posts with Elasticsearch. December, a little over a year ago, I was on the WordPress Watercooler podcast, and someone asked, what would you like to see get into Jetpack soon? I said related content, because I had a wonderful friend of mine, whose name is Mike Schroeder. He works at DreamHost. He has been on me for months saying, please get related content in there, please get related content in there. Well, basically, we're syncing your content up to WordPress.com, we're indexing it all with Elasticsearch, we're applying latent semantic analysis on it, so even if you're not using taxonomies like categories and tags, we're going to find what the useful keywords are in it, we're going to pull those out, we're going to find what other articles you have that is similar to those keywords, and then we're going to spit out the top 3 at the bottom of your post. If you have featured images or images in the content of those posts, we're also going to put out the images so it looks like you see on the right there, but if we can't find enough images for them, we'll just put out the titles on the left. We're very good about finding images and content, so even if you're linking to an external Flickr image, that can still be used as well. And honestly, related content is something that is very hard to do well on self-hosted sites because latent semantic analysis is entirely impossible to do. You're either going to be going based entirely on a bunch of additional database queries that are looking at common taxonomies, whether posts or tags or something, or they're going to ask you to manually specify what you want your related content to be. This just handles everything behind the scenes automatically and we have found very, very good results with it turns up actually the most useful content. So we're very happy with it. Down the road for expansion, we're looking on eventually reaching out and letting you network sites together. So if you happen to have 5 different sites on Jetpack, you can say, related content from this, don't just look on the same site, look on these other 4 of my sites and find a related post over there and link to that as well. So a great way of cross-linking back and forth between sites as you like. One more thing. Just shipping open source code isn't enough. The number one complaint you hear about folks about finding plugins on the repository is they aren't updated anymore, or they're abandoned, or sure they shipped it, but what do I do when there's a bug? We have a full team actively dedicated to developing and maintaining Jetpack. We also have another full team of 9 folks that fully support users across WordPress.org through support forums, email support, and social media channels. If something goes wrong, we will fix it. If you need help, we'll be there. As much as I was going on and on about all the other features we have on Jetpack, the support and maintenance is by far, in my estimation, the most important thing for actually driving adoption. Because in the end, if something breaks, if there's a plugin conflict, let us know, we'll help. And now just last pitch before I wrap up. If you're interested in joining Automattic, want to make a web a better place for more than 500 million people every year, or more than a full billion people each month, we're hiring. We currently have 300 plus automaticians, fully distributed all over the world. I'm going to shut up now, so questions? Or should we take a break and then come back for questions?
Good to keep going, or
Can you scroll that back once quick so I can send that to somebody?
if you're good to keep going, let's
Okay.
in there.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Can you maybe just step back for a second about what Jetpack is? It's a plugin that requires you to have a WordPress.com account.
Yes.
That you can run on any WordPress site. Can you speak more about the WordPress.com aspect of it? What is running on WordPress.com? Why is that a part of it? You know, as opposed to any other plugin you would install.
Sure. Well, back to the very start.
Yeah.
When I was talking about philosophy or our mission, the second part of that is leveraging the WordPress.com cloud servers. To hook into the WordPress.com, you need to be authenticated so we know who you are. Just for API rate limiting, for if you're going to pass up data, we need to know who you are so we're not giving it back to the wrong person. So there are probably about half, not quite half, of the modules in Jetpack you can probably use without actually connecting to WordPress.com in theory. There's a constant you can define if you really want to run it in local mode and not connect to WordPress.com. But because a typical user's experience is a lot smoother if it's just at the very beginning you turn on Jetpack, you connect to a WordPress.com account and everything works. There's no, I was using these three modules just fine, why do I have to connect when I activate the fourth one? In the end, it's a lot simpler for users just to have to initially connect and then be done.
So is the database on WordPress.com? Is all the data?
Some content is synced up to WordPress.com as needed. If you're using, let's see, Publicize.
Yeah.
When you publish a post, because WordPress.com servers are actually sending your post content out, when you hit publish and publicize a post, the post content is going to sync up to WordPress.com servers, just for the purpose that you've actually opted into for wanting to get the data publicized out. If you're not publicizing it, then it won't sync.
So it would be still hosted on whatever your other host is. But if you're going to publicize it, then it's hosted on WordPress.com.
Yes. As needed, some of your data will sync up to WordPress.com servers, just so we can do what you want us to do with it.
Okay.
That's all.
What if you're using the JSON API and you happen to get all posts? Will all posts be synced with WordPress.com?
The JSON API is interesting the way it juggles things. Some content is synced, some isn't. The majority of JSON API requests pass straight through. So they go to the WordPress.com endpoint, queries your site, gets the data back, and then passes it back to the requesting application. The main advantage of that is it's using OAuth authentication, so it's not passing your password with every request. And it's also making requests to the HTTPS WordPress.com endpoints as opposed to an HTTP XML/RPC endpoint directly on your site. So it's more secure, even though it does basically loop around the long way to get your content.
Is there a way to avoid that? If you wanted to not, just argument's sake, if we were going to...
Avoid what specifically?
Like the loop going to WordPress.com?
We're looking into eventually having a opt-in way to just syncing a lot, saying, okay, just sync a lot more of my content up, and then at that point, WordPress.com can short-circuit it, say, oh, I know what this is, I'm just going to answer it instead of passing through more requests directly to your site.
Well, I think we meant more not going to WordPress.com at all. Just going
Like,
directly.
for example,
yeah.
Right now the way it works, you have to do all the calls to public.wordpress.com. Can it be like yourdomain.com and then your call?
There's a separate JSON API that's being actively developed for inclusion in core. Ryan McHugh, Rachel Baker, and some other folks are active developers on that. That sounds more like what you're after, but as that doesn't have a full HTTPS support, because that's dependent on whether or not you have an SSL certificate, there's a number of other reasons why that's not going to be necessarily as secure as running things through WordPress.com. Our JSON REST API needs to run through the WordPress.com endpoints just because how it's architected to be secure.
Are you planning on sort of syncing between the two APIs so that, you know, if you decided just to switch from accessing WordPress.com?
When the JSON REST API that they're developing for core does merge into core, it's going to be as a kind of combined version between the two. There's the V1 of the fully open source plugin for WordPress, and then there's the V1 of the WordPress.com REST API. What Matt said in the State of the Word last year is basically Ryan McHugh, Rachel Baker, the folks on the open source side, and Justin Shreve, Bo Lavens, and a number of other folks on the .com side are having a they've actually been working on integration right now. So there's going to be a version 2 when it rolls into core, and that's the point at which the two of them have converged. Yeah.
I am launching a website. I'm in the process of a launch, and I have a team of bloggers. Now, I had everyone register at WordPress through WordPress.com, just get an account, so they would have a gravatar, so the gravatar would show up on the site.
Sure.
But now I'm thinking, I can't control their passwords and where they write from and being in coffee shops. Should I tell each of them to log in through, did I hear you right? You can log into a WordPress, a private installation through Jetpack? Is that how?
Yeah.
So I should tell them to log in through their Jetpack accounts?
If you have that option turned on currently. I'd be glad to walk you through it afterwards. But the single sign-on that I was mentioning earlier.
Yeah. Or should I just get one account for everyone? It'll be just get a separate Jetpack account in the name of the company that owns the website.
Your best bet is definitely going to be for everyone to have their own user account. If everyone's sharing one account, the instant you fire one user or fire one writer, you're going to have a lot of problems.
Okay, so everyone has their own.
Yes. And then they can, if they want to, they could use single sign-on to log onto your site, or if they're on a public network, they could just as easily log on to WordPress.com and write the post there to be published to your site without actually going to your site's dashboard at all, if they've connected their user accounts between the two.
Okay, okay, you'll talk to me about how to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does it matter how many self-hosted sites you have connected to a WordPress.com account?
Nope. You can have a, I think the record currently is a little over 4,000.
Oh, that's a lot. So let's say you needed to, in the case of this woman, what if at some point you launch a site, you want to not have that site connected to your own WordPress.com account? Is there a way to transfer it to someone else's?
Yep.
Okay.
Just disconnect it from your user account, and if someone else is already connected, they should inherit the connection. If not, they can just reconnect it.
Okay.
It's very easy, just disconnect and reconnect.
Will they inherit the settings?
Should, yeah.
And the pricing is zero? Or what?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just magically nice.
Yes, pretty much. I mean, we have a small module in it that says paid WordPress is cool. And there is one paid module in Jetpack, and that is VideoPress, that has an upcoming iteration, because currently it's kind of awkward in that it's paid kind of. The current iteration means that you have a WordPress.com site that has VideoPress subscribed to it, and then your self-hosted site can attach to that, upload images, upload videos to it, embed videos from it, but you're not actually, but there's no payment attached to your Jetpack site. It's all on the master.com site that they're linked to. Really confusing. We're working on a better way of doing it. But yes, everything else free. Have fun.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
You were speaking about stats earlier. Could
Yes.
you clarify exactly what homepage archives means?
Homepage archive. Basically, if you're viewing a your homepage and it's a list of posts and you're scrolling through, when you that should count as you read the post.
So it's not necessarily the post that they came in on, it's reading.
Well, if it counts what posts they've seen. So if you open the homepage and there's 5 posts there, and it's the full post, not just the excerpt, and they scroll down through, okay, I've read the first post, I've read the second post, I've read the third post. It'll also track like incoming pages, I believe, what your incoming landing pages are, as well as referrals, but the main thing is that it's going to, no matter how your permalinks change or how the users view your content, or even if you're using infinite scroll, it'll go through and as they keep scrolling down and down, it'll keep tracking, okay, this is a view, that's a view, that's a view, that's a view. We've seen all these posts, and this post has been seen 833 times in the last 24 hours, what have you. Does that make sense?
Sort of.
Okay. Find me after, I'd be happy to explain further if you need.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm a plugin developer.
Okay.
So actually I want to hear your perspective on that, how plugin developers and Jetpack are going to work together in the future as an ecosystem. It hurts one each other.
Sure. What aspect? I mean, there's as many things as Jetpack does, as many options as you may see in the admin, there's at least twice that many filters that we throw in, because there's a lot of things that third-party plugin developers may want to do to extend or modify Jetpack that we don't necessarily want to support ourselves, but we have no problem adding in filters, adding in actions, adding in things that make it easy for other folks to extend us, to modify us, to, if you, by default, some modules, if they're not affecting the front end of the site, may turn on by default when you update and first get them. We include a filter to turn that off if you want. By default, Jetpack.
I'm not sure you got the question. I mean, you're putting a lot of effort and manpower into Jetpack, and for us as developers, it's pretty hard to compete with that.
Oh!
And you want to bring more and more publishers using your thing rather than using third-party.
We're aiming at what'll be most useful to the most to people. This by no means means that we're going to own the ecosystem. We're going to own top to bottom everything. We have a contact form module. Does that in any way mean that there aren't going to be other contact form modules that do it in different and better or more in-depth ways? Absolutely not. Gravity Forms has, Lord only knows how much revenue per year, selling their own contact form module. I certainly don't think that we're affecting them.
Apparently they're doing better since you added contact form, according to Matt.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things that we're doing that we're not necessarily going into like enterprise level support, enterprise level things. So there's definitely space, like with the last release, we released Jetpack Manage. So from the WordPress.com dashboard, you can update stuff on all your sites, you can write posts to whichever your sites you happen to choose to. But at the same time, there are lots of other services like Infinite WP, Managed WP, iTheme Sync, about a half dozen others that are paid services in the same space. They're doing well. I think I heard Vladimir of Managed WP said that there has been one person that left Managed WP because Jetpack offered the free tier of management. It's really not that much direct competition. There's a lot more fish in the pond, and our main focus.
It's already, obviously, it is a competition. When you say I have 50 support people that will fix every issue that you have, and on the other hand you have 2 developers, there is big benefit to go and work with you, especially if you're free.
Sure.
So saying there's no competition.
Well, it's more a question of what you're doing. I mean, we have some things that we're doing, and we're going to focus on building those out and making those really awesome. So third-party developers do something that we're not doing. Go, be awesome. Our focus is on building the ecosystem as a whole, not so much, and a rising tide raises all ships. I mean, by increasing the ecosystem as a whole, there's a lot more room for niche-specific plugins to step in and handle things that we may not be able to. WordPress is currently running 23% of the web. And if we're just doing this stuff, which is the big stuff that a lot of folks may broadly use, how many users do you think are going to be getting a lot more specific with their needs, that need something that's a lot more detailed or oriented to a specific niche or field that we're not going to want to support? Because there's a lot of pull requests and a lot of feature requests that I get for Jetpack that I just say no to, because that would take away from a lot of the other things that we're trying to iterate on and grow on and help build out.
But it sounds like you're pretty pissed off.
I mean, I'm just asking, curious. I mean, one of the things that makes WordPress, or made WordPress so powerful, is the flexibility. The plugin basically can build everything. Mm-hmm. And for me, it feels like you're more driving the direction to be Squarespace or something like that, to centralize all the control in one place, which is called Jetpack.
Well, in the end, our biggest competition, as in the WordPress ecosystem's biggest competition, is the Wix, the Weebly's, and the Squarespaces of the world. Those are the folks that, they're the closed source, they own your data ecosystems where you can't always sit in, I'm going to just install a plugin that'll give me e-commerce functionality. They're the ones that are really have the hosted, fully all-in-one solution that really is what's drawing folks away from open source content management systems like WordPress. By providing Jetpack that handles a lot of this cloud power to provide a parity experience and work on supporting it, we can keep users happy, engaged, and within the WordPress ecosystem, and that's a lot more potential customers for other plugin developers to sell to.
Yeah, I mean, as a novice, like, I'll use Jetpack, but if your plugin is better, I'll turn that off and use yours, or buy yours.
All the features in here can be turned off one by one. Yeah. Contact forms. I personally love Gravity Forms. I still pay for my developer license even though I've not done freelance work in a year and a half. Because it's great. And that's something that we're going to have, our basic entry-level contact forms module. But as soon as the user wants to outgrow that, they're going to need to move to something else. Gravity Forms, Ninja Forms, Contact Form 7 to an extent, and some others are there to fill that hole. Find what we're not doing well and be better at it.
But those third-party plugins are not allowed on WordPress.com.
What third-party plugins aren't allowed on WordPress? Oh, on .com?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, if you want to drive more and more people through Jetpack to WordPress.com eventually, because you see that everything should be hosted probably.
We're not trying to pull people onto WordPress.com by getting them started using Jetpack. We're trying to, if anything, we're trying to help folks move to WordPress.org where they can install plugins, use Jetpack, sure, to get a parity experience with what they've had on .com, but open them up so that they can, if they want to use e-commerce, they can go by shop or use WP e-commerce with 8 different modules, whatever they happen to need. Now, I think we're getting a little bit too much in depth on this question, so I'm going to move on. And I'd be glad to pick this up with you afterwards. I just don't want to monopolize, and I see a couple people running out the back, and I don't want to scare them off by getting down a tangent. So you've had your hand up for a bit, and I'm going to loop back over that side.
With modules like related content already running through Elasticsearch indexing, is there any plan for a search replacement module to take over WordPress search?
Yes. It's probably about a year out, just because our focus is on other things right now. But we do have some Elasticsearch index endpoints where you can actually run arbitrary Elasticsearch things. They're not really documented, but they exist. But we have been toying around with the idea of something that basically replaces the local search page entirely and then runs everything off the WordPress.com API via JavaScript. And then you can do auto-completion of search terms. You can do pre-populated pagination, so it'll instantly skip to the next page. You can do sort by relevance instead of just sort by your most recent post that happens to have that word in it, which is what Core's search does, which is, but there's only so much you can do with MySQL on that, honestly. But yeah, yes.
Let's say you're building a single-page application with Ember or Angular, for example. Can you use some of the front-end features like the sharing buttons or the contact form with it? Or do you have to use the traditional theming method?
You certainly could. It's just a question of generating the contact form and then making sure the processing is being handled. The contact form is kind of interesting the way we structure it, because instead of having like saving the form separately from the post, the form is just a short code that then once the form submits to the page of the post that the short code is embedded to, and then the processing script parses the post to pull out the short code, find out what fields to expect, parses the input against that. Is complicated, but yes, it's possible. Okay. I'd be glad to go on when I'm not boring other people. Yes, in the back.
Is there a particular caching plugin that you would recommend that plays best with Jetpack?
Super cache and back cache, but that back cache is different. Back cache uses memcache as a kind of like a fragment full page cache type thing, which is better for like if you're running things behind a load balancer and then you're running memcache on another box. That'll basically work without having like different cache bits on different servers. Whereas super cache is based more for if you're on a shared server, just use it and be happy. Yeah.
In your post the other week, you were talking about why modules all exist inside the singular Jetpack.
I will get to part 2 eventually. Don't rush me.
So I shouldn't ask any questions that might
I'd be glad to explain it, but is it just like give you a prelude to what's coming in part 2?
No,
or?
I mean it makes total sense for modules like Photon and related posts where you actually have to connect to WordPress.com for it. But something like Infinite Scroll, for example, where you can just pull the module out into your plugins directory and run it as a singular plugin. What's the reasoning for those kind of modules being in Jetpack?
A number of things. Long story short, I've written a post saying why Jetpack is a bunch of features rolled into one plugin versus 38 different plugins. And the main one I focused on in the first post was because dependency management in Core sucks. So the Core connection library between your self-hosted site and WordPress.com may need to be a different version based on which other plugins you would have alongside it, and then if those are not both up to date, one could expect this version of the Core connection library, the other could expect this version, and then one of them is going to break and more support requests and bad things happen. That's the long and short of post 1. Post 2 is a number of things, one of which is we currently ship Jetpack, and I want to say like 38 different languages, and managing translations over like 30-some release cycles, because they would be all different plugins, and all those strings that cannot be reused as easily from one to the next is a lot harder to actually handle the translations of. Plus, if we, instead of managing one plugin with one release cycle, we're managing 38 different active release cycles, I don't think we'd actually get anything done. Compounded by the fact that basically there's a lot of economy of scale that we can do because we're running everything off one GitHub repository. And the majority of our modules are actually synced back and forth with code actually running on WordPress.com. We have a really awesome sync script which takes into account the fact that WordPress.com is versioned under Subversion and Jetpack runs under Git. So it'll actually find change sets in one, find the common ancestor, and then cross-apply the change sets from one to the other. And if we had to do that via WordPress.com and then 30 some odd different plugins, things would get missed, things would get dropped, versus one common build script that can just juggle everything at once. Plus, then we're not gaining from the same economies of scale of having one grunt instance that can run through and handle all our compiling and all our concatenation. One thing we started shipping a couple releases ago is a concatenated style sheet for the front end, because if you have all our modules active, there was this very frustrating bit where you could potentially have maybe 15, 20 odd CSS files being loaded in on your front end. All the ones that are being loaded on the front end that are commonly used, we've now ship a concatenated version of the CSS. So there's only one asset, it's all properly minified, it's all properly concatenated, everything's specific enough that it's not going to hurt your site if you wind up loading in the CSS from a module that's inactive. So there's a lot of economy of scale. There's about 3 other things that I meant to write in the post that are not coming immediately to mind right now. But I wrote a reply to Eric Mann on his blog when he was griping about Jetpack about 3 months ago, and the bulk of it's actually in that comment. If you really, really want to go digging, or you can just wait until I write the thing in, I don't know, hopefully the next week or 2 or eventually. Yeah.
How specifically can you limit related content? For instance, well, one question would be like, could you limit it just to images, just to related content with images, or just to related content without images?
So we've got a lot of filters in there currently. We love filters. We love making it easy.
Like how niche specific could you get? Could you limit it to individual authors, for instance?
If you want. Basically, the related content endpoint passes back a list of post IDs and their relevance percentages. I believe we pass all that through a filter, so then you can take those post IDs and say, I'm going to look up this post and find out its author, find out its categories. Do I want this one? Yes, no, just ditch it, come to the next one. And then basically, I think we pass back maybe 10 or 20 or so, but we only actually use the first 3. So there's a wide range there. You can just trim and prune until you find the ones you want.
So that if there's like a top 10 that you regularly want, you can trim it down to that.
Yeah. And if you want to manually write in something
that was what I was wondering. Yeah.
If you wanted to write in something that you could manually say, like in the post edit screen, add an extra meta box, so someone could say, I want for this post, I always want 1, 2, 3 to be the 3 posts that show up, and then that just pulls from post meta and overrides it. That's totally feasible as well. Did that make any sense to the rest of you? Okay, I'm sorry. Other questions?
Your friend at DreamHost.
Yes.
How does it relate to DreamHost's WordPress?
Because related posts, if you're trying to run it against a MySQL database locally, it's very hard on the servers because it's running a lot of extra queries, especially running full text search queries against the post content field.
Right. No, I meant in larger view. How does Jetpack relate to their WordPress? What DreamPress?
Yeah. We get along marvelously with DreamHost. They normally, I believe, they unless you specifically ask for their one-click installer to give you a blank WordPress install with nothing in it, they pre-install WordPress. They pre-install Jetpack for you.
I'm not talking the shared hosting. I'm talking the new DreamPress service option.
Yeah.
Which I haven't played with.
No, a lot of different hosts have been experimenting with dedicated WordPress-specific hosting packages. DreamHost was one of the earlier ones with GreenPress, but Bluehost has a specific one. Normally they'll include like Varnish and I believe some sort of persistent object cache. GoDaddy has one that came out recently, maybe in the last year or so they've been pushing. And then there's the next tier up of like the iPage, WP Engine, PageLeap, what have you. But for the more budget, $5 a month ones, yeah, there's a lot of really good offerings out there. It's certainly, if you're willing to pay a little bit more, like maybe 10 to $20 a month, you can get some really decent hosting.
Well, I think GreenPress is $20 a month.
Yes.
Yeah. But they're loving you, it's a love fest, and really it's meant to address the Wixes, the Squarespaces, and other of those ilks.
We basically want to improve the WordPress ecosystem so everyone can benefit. Not to make it sound too cheesy, but
that's cheese.
Yeah.
It's whatever cheese balls. No, yeah, cheese balls taste good. Thanks, man. I get it.
Yeah.
So I guess one thing that I hear from people who talk about Jetpack is it sticks itself at the top of the admin menu. Right?
Yeah.
Why?
Because a lot of the things you'll most commonly go to, like stats, are part of the Jetpack menu. It was something that was decided early on before my tenure, and it's just something that's carried through. I'm not particularly attached to it being at the top. It's just that's where we've been. That's where we've always been. There are third-party plugins that will take it, bump it down below. But if you want to bump it down, go ahead. I won't be offended. I don't care. But that's why it's open source. You can take it, hack it, change it however you want.
And the other thing is that some people will say that Jetpack does things that other plugins can't do.
And that's patently false.
So can you explain?
Is there anything that any of you think Jetpack is doing that you would not be allowed to do? We've had these people thinking, oh, you're phoning home, you're not allowed to do that. Well, if you read the plugin directory guidelines, you're totally allowed to communicate with your own servers as long as you have the user's informed consent, which we get at the very beginning with the big green button that says connect to your WordPress.com account. So at the point where the user says, sure, go ahead, connect to my WordPress.com account, we've got the user's consent to start passing data back and forth and doing things to benefit the user. We're not passing things to scrape their site for evil, maniacal purposes or anything. We're syncing the content that we need up to do the things that the users has asked us to do. That's all. We don't have some sort of behind the scenes look at how the .org infrastructure for plugins repo is running. We don't have back-end plugin stats. We don't know all this stuff that Matt might have in his dashboard. I run the Jetpack plugin. I don't know. That's not my business, so it's not my place to know, basically.
Do you sync user information? Like users on your own blog?
I believe only if the user is connected to WordPress.com. Because there's the main account that the main account owner will connect, but each other user on the site can choose to connect. So when they publish a post, they can have their own Twitter account connected that they can publicize to.
I mean more like subscribers and stuff like that.
Subscribers, you can get the data, you can get the emails out on the WordPress.com dashboard where you're viewing subscriber stats. You can export email subscribers. I don't believe you can get out reader subscribers.
So if I've got a WordPress.com blog,
yes,
and now
if you migrate from WordPress.com to Jetpack, one simple request and we will migrate all your followers, your subscribers, and your stats over for you.
So the scraping I've been doing has been a waste of time.
Yes.
And send that to what team?
Support at jetpack.me.
Okay.
Or just ask me on Slack next time.
Yeah, I know. And the Brute Protect.
Yes.
there's still a plugin for that
Yes.
until it's merged in. Is that correct?
Yes, it's going to be running standalone for probably at least the next 6 months as well, even after it's merged in.
Okay.
There are some legacy users that are just like, rar, Jetpack is evil, me no want Jetpack. So they're going to have 6 months to either migrate or find something else to use. It's rolled in, and we're also getting better data because we can also track brute force login attempts to WordPress.com across all, I don't even know how many million sites are currently hosted on WordPress.com. We now have access to all of those, and that's resulting in better, richer, more useful data across the network.
Will that include the VIP blocks?
Yeah. So if someone's trying to brute force their way into TechCrunch, they will then block themselves from your personal site.
Perfect.
Yes.
But I can still use the plugin without having the WordPress.com account, right?
Root Protect?
No, your plugin, the Jetpack.
You can, but a lot of the features will not work, and you need to define a constant in WP config to let you use some of the stuff without connecting to WordPress.com first.
Will it tell you which features you have if you don't have a WordPress.com?
So I have this in local debug mode currently. When you go to Jetpack settings, you'll basically see here are the things you can use. Everything you can't is grayed out at the bottom. You can't do anything with them. You can't activate them. So.
Well, that's a great question. So for all of your filters, and if a developer wanted to tie into all this, where is the best place for the documentation?
We have a lot of support documentation on jetpack.me. One of my goals for the year is to have inline PHP documentation on every function in Jetpack and every filter in Jetpack, and then use something similar to the developer.wordpress.org extractor to extract that into an actual documentation site, make it a lot easier to read up and get code examples and whatnot.
So like if I were looking to filter the related post content, the best place right now would be to actually, read the plugin.
Currently,
rep it for this.
Either read the plugin or ask one of the devs, and we'd be glad to walk you through it. We're easy to get a hold of and happy to help, normally. Unless you poke me way too much. Yeah?
If someone wanted to use the feature with the updating, so to update for,
yes.
What would you suggest for, let's make believe it's a new user, to use for a backup before they engage in just running?
I would recommend VaultPress personally, but but in all honesty, we're actually looking at expanding that in the next. I was talking to Bo about it. Bo, who formerly of here, New York, who I assume probably at least a couple of you remember, tall guy, Australian accent. He's now heading up the Mercury team, which has been focusing on the Jetpack managed development. I've been begging him to finish up something that I was asking him about 2 months ago. Long story short, we want to add in with the authentication to the JSON REST API on WordPress.com, an extra scope parameter that will then let third-party app developers have full access to the managed endpoints. So if Managed WP wanted to let folks log in with your .com credentials, that could then let you use the Jetpack managed endpoints from Managed WP's infrastructure. We like playing nice with other providers, so yeah. I'm sorry, I think I answered something you didn't ask.
What, did you just want a backup plugin?
Wait, the backup plugin?
Yes, VaultPress. Okay, I did answer that.
What does that cost now? Do you know?
There's a number of different ways of doing it. What we're currently recommending is you can do a $100 a year VaultPress Akismet combo that will basically give you backups, I believe security scanning, business level Akismet, because currently Akismet is free for personal blogs, but if you've ever used a free key on a business site, shame on you. You're supposed to pay. We really don't make a big deal out of it, but it's meant to be free for personal blogs. Business sites, you're supposed to chip in, pay what you will. But we're basically rolling out business bundles and personal bundles to make things a lot simpler for, and then we're going to throw in other things. And it's the VaultPress Akismet bundle is currently available. Yes. On the subscribe page of either Akismet or VaultPress.
I pay for both separately.
Okay. Yeah, that should be swappable. I will, if you need help, I will be glad to put you in touch with one of the happiness engineers, and they can get you hooked up.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any way to develop locally with Photon like functionality to test the scale and resize and
Yeah. If you look at the each module in Jetpack has a little, it kind of looks like a plugin header comment. On the top of Photon, it says, I think connection required, yes. If you change that comment to connection required, no, you can activate it in local debug mode. Don't tell anyone I told you this, and please blur this out on the recording. But no, the reason Photon is required to be connected to WordPress.com for is more to make sure it's covered under the terms of service. It doesn't really require a back-end connection. It's more we require it because otherwise, actually no, that won't work. I lied to you. Because it's a pull CDN, which would need to be able to reach to your local site to pull the image up to host it, and it wouldn't be able to get it otherwise, so I'm wrong. But you could do that on a remote site that was accessible to the world as long as it wasn't logged into .com. By that point, you may as well just authenticate. So.
Theoretically, you can just append the
Yeah.
whatever URL.
You can just URL hack given Photon Image to play with it and do whatever you want. So it's just get parameters that you're appending onto the end of it. And there's a lot of documentation for that on developer.wordpress.com. In the menu, you can find Photon, or I think it's like /doc/Photon or something. But yeah. I think I'm boring everyone and scaring them away. So unless there's any questions, I'm going to shut up and answer one-on-one questions that folks might have. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you much.